A courtroom is supposed to be a house of justice, but for Judge Patricia Voss, it was her personal kingdom built on prejudice and fueled by greed. She wielded her gavel like a hammer, crushing the lives of the innocent, especially those who looked different. A disheveled black man named Jack Reed stood before her, accused of a minor crime. Judge Voss, seeing an easy target, decided to make an example of him. She insulted him, mocked him, and tried to throw him in jail to rot. What she did not know was that Jack Reed was not a vagrant. He was the director of the FBI, and he was not just on trial. He was on her case. The air in Courtroom 3B of the Central District Courthouse in downtown Chicago was always stale, thick with the scent of old paper, cheap disinfectant, and quiet desperation. Presiding over this chamber of misery was Judge Patricia Voss, a woman whose black robes seemed to draw all the light and warmth from the room. Her silver hair was pulled back into a bun so tight it looked painful, and her face was a permanent mask of sour disapproval. She was in a particularly foul mood. "Mr. Bradshaw," she sighed, looking down at a young man with a fraternity haircut and an expensive suit. "This is your second DUI. What do you have to say for yourself?" His lawyer, a slick man named Harrington, stood. "Your Honor, Tyler is a good kid. He is applying for a mentorship program with the mayor's office. He simply made a poor judgment call." "He is a menace," Voss snapped. But there was no heat in it. Still, the mayor's program was fine. She banged her gavel. "A substantial fine, hours of community service, which I am sure Mr. Harrington will find a way to fulfill for you, and a license suspension. Do not let me see you in here again, Mr. Bradshaw. You are better than this." "Thank you, Your Honor," the young man said, a smirk playing on his lips. "Next case," shouted the bailiff, a burly man named Carson, who mirrored the judge's unpleasant demeanor. "The People versus Jack Reed." The energy in the room shifted. The side door opened and a sheriff's deputy pushed a man forward. He was black, in his late 40s, and dressed in a rumpled t-shirt, torn jeans, and a jacket that looked like it had been slept in. His beard was unkempt, and his hair was matted. This was the man who had been arrested for trespassing in a public park in Chicago, after hours and resisting arrest. Judge Voss's eyes narrowed, her disapproval hardening into genuine contempt. "Well, well, Mr. Reed, stand up straight when you address the court." The man, Jack Reed, simply looked at her, his expression unreadable. "Your public defender is—" "Ah, Miss Harper," Voss said, waving a hand dismissively. A young, visibly nervous woman, Emily Harper, hurried to the podium. "Your Honor, my client, Mr. Reed, pleads not guilty. We request bail be set at his own recognizance. He has no prior record, and the charges are—" "What, Miss Harper?" Voss's voice was sharp as glass. "He was trespassing. He resisted Officer Reynolds. Is that what you call minor?" "The resisting charge seems unsubstantiated, Your Honor. My client states he merely asked why he was being arrested." Emily fumbled, shuffling her papers. Voss let out a sound that was half scoff, half laugh. She turned her full, venomous attention to the man in the torn jacket. "Mr. Reed, do you have a job?" Jack Reed looked at her. His voice was quiet, raspy. "I am between projects." "Between projects?" Voss mocked. "Is that what we are calling vagrancy now? Where do you live?" "Here and there." "I see." Judge Voss leaned forward, her knuckles white on her gavel. "So, we have a jobless vagrant who resists police officers and thinks public parks are his personal bedroom. And you want me to release him on his own recognizance so he can go back to resisting and being between projects all over this city." "Your Honor, he has a right to reasonable bail," Emily Harper protested weakly. "Rights of tax-paying citizens who contribute to society, Miss Harper," Voss said, her voice dropping to a dangerous low. Not for people like Mr. Reed who drain our resources. The racial subtext was so thick it was practically a physical object in the room. Jack Reed finally spoke again, his voice clear, not in the least intimidated. So, contributing to society is a prerequisite for justice, Your Honor? The courtroom went silent. Judge Voss's face turned a shade of mottled crimson. Are you questioning me, boy? Is that contempt I hear in your voice? I'm asking a question, ma'am, he said, holding her gaze. Ma'am, she shrieked, you will address me as Your Honor. Bailiff Carson. Yes, Judge. I find this vagrant in contempt of court. And for the original charges, I am setting bail at $50,000. A collective gasp went through the gallery. Emily Harper's jaw dropped. 50,000, Your Honor? That is unconstitutional for trespassing. You just let a man who could have killed someone walk out of here with a fine. Are you also in contempt, Miss Harper? Voss hissed. One more word and I will have you sanctioned. Mr. Reed, you will be remanded to the Cook County Jail until you can post bond or until your trial date, whichever comes first. And given your attitude, I will be sure to schedule that trial for as far out as the law allows. Get him out of my sight. Bailiff Carson grabbed Jack Reed's arm with unnecessary roughness. Let's go, Project. As he was being led away, Jack looked back one last time at Judge Patricia Voss. He was not angry. He was not scared. He was memorizing. And as the heavy door slammed shut, Judge Voss smiled, feeling a deep, satisfying sense of order restored. She had put another piece of trash where it belonged. The holding cell at the Cook County Jail was a concrete box that smelled of bleach, sweat, and despair. Jack Reed, or as he was known outside these walls, Director Michael Reed of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, sat on a thin mattress and cataloged his surroundings. This was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was the culmination of Operation Justice Shield, a multi-agency investigation into Judge Patricia Voss. It had started with a tip from a terrified whistleblower, a former court clerk named Rosa Mendoza. Rosa had brought the FBI a stack of documents. They showed a pattern: nonviolent minority offenders receiving maximum sentences while wealthy white defendants, especially those represented by certain law firms or connected to certain developers, had their charges disappear. The money trail was complex, laundered through shell corporations and judicial charities. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, led by Agent Lopez, had been tracing the money, but the civil rights violations were harder to prove. Voss was clever. Her racism was couched in legal-sounding terms like prior record, vagrancy, and contempt. The operation needed a final piece. They needed to prove unequivocally that Voss's malice was personal, that she would manufacture justice based on her own prejudice. You are insane, Director, Agent Daniels, his second-in-command, had argued in the command center, a nondescript van parked 2 blocks from the courthouse. Going in yourself as a vagrant? What if they search you, find your credentials? They will not, Michael had said, pulling on the torn jacket. All my credentials, weapons, and comms are with you. I am going in clean. We need to see her in action. We need to feel the system she has created. We need the audio from inside. He had a tiny state-of-the-art audio transmitter, no bigger than a grain of rice, surgically implanted in his ear. A last resort device for deep cover operations. He could activate it with a specific click of his teeth. And it was now live. Everything he heard, everything said to him was being beamed directly to Agent Daniels. A key rattled in the lock. Bailiff Carson stood there, a nasty grin on his face. Got a special visitor, Reed, Carson sneered. He was flanked by 2 other guards who looked like they had been carved from granite. The judge does not like being disrespected. She called ahead. Wanted to make sure you got the special welcome package. Michael stood slowly. And what does that entail? It entails you learn your place. The first punch came from Carson, a hard practice shot to the gut that drove the air from Michael's lungs. The next two came from the guards, one to the ribs, one to the face. Michael, highly trained in hand-to-hand combat, had to force himself to take the blows, to collapse realistically, to not disarm all three of them in seconds. He crumpled to the floor, tasting blood. "That is just a down payment," Carson panted, adjusting his belt. "You keep that mouth of yours shut. Maybe you will make it to your trial. If not, accidents happen." He kicked Michael once more in the ribs for good measure, and the three of them left, laughing. Michael lay on the cold concrete, every part of him aching. He clicked his teeth twice, signaling to Daniels. Evidence received. He was right. This was the only way. You could not just read a file to understand this level of evil. You had to wear it. Michael was brought back to the courtroom for the morning's arraignments, sitting in the jury box with other shackled inmates. He was the prop, the warning. Voss wanted the other defendants to see what happened when you disrespected her. She was currently hearing the case of Jamal Wright, a 19-year-old black kid arrested for possession of a controlled substance. "Mr. Wright," Voss said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy, "this is a serious charge, and I see here you have a prior resisting arrest." "But I did not resist," Jamal said, his voice cracking. "The officer, Mr. Wright, I am not interested in your excuses," Voss said. "You were caught with narcotics and you have a history of non-compliance. This community will not tolerate it. I am sentencing you to the mandatory minimum in state prison." The boy's mother, sitting in the back, let out a strangled sob. "He is a good boy. The other charge, it was a mistake." "Remove that woman," Voss barked. As Jamal Wright was led away, his eyes met Michael's. In them, Michael saw the end of hope. He saw a life being broken in real time. Michael clicked his teeth. "Agent Daniels, pull the file on Jamal Wright. I want that prior arresting officer's name. I want to know who he talks to, who he takes money from. I am betting it is Carson." Voss, energized by her display of power, finally turned her gaze to Michael. "Ah, Mr. Reed, back for more. I hope your accommodations were to your liking. Miss Harper, any progress on that $50,000 bond?" "Your Honor, you know that is impossible," Emily said, her voice shaking with rage. "This is punitive and it is cruel." "It is justice," Voss corrected. "And as for your client, I have reviewed the trespassing charge. I am adding a charge of vagrancy and intent to commit public nuisance. We will see how you feel after a few more nights, Mr. Reed. Maybe then you will learn to respect the law." She banged her gavel, a grim smile on her face. Next case. For a stretch, Michael Reed endured the system. He ate the flavorless gray food. He listened to the casual cruelty of the guards. He talked to the other inmates. And he gathered intelligence. He learned from a man in his cell block that Bailiff Carson ran the entire commissary kickback scheme using a specific guard as his bagman. He learned that Officer Reynolds, the cop who arrested him, was Carson's cousin. It was a family business. He also learned that Jamal Wright's prior resisting arrest charge had come from the same officer, Reynolds. It was a setup. Reynolds would target young black men, stop them for nothing, and if they so much as asked a question, he would tack on a resisting charge, making them prior for Judge Voss to sentence heavily. In the command van, Agent Daniels and Agent Lopez were working furiously. "He was right," Daniels said, his eyes glued to a financial chart on his screen. Jamal Wright's arrest. Reynolds, Carson. A payment had been transferred from a police benevolent fund, which was just a slush account, to Carson's wife. "It is dirtier than that," Agent Lopez said, tapping her keyboard. I have got the bank manager for the developer, Mr. Caldwell. We have been squeezing him. He just flipped. Judge Voss is not just taking bribes to let kids off. She is directing the arrests. What? Daniels turned, stunned. It is a broken windows scheme. She gets a developer, let us say Ryan Caldwell's father, to donate to her charity. In exchange, she directs Reynolds and Carson to clean up the neighborhood where he wants to build his new luxury condos. That means arresting homeless people, kids hanging out, anyone who looks like a vagrant, people like Jack Reed. She gets them off the street. Caldwell gets his property values up and she gets rich. And she jails the director of the FBI in the process, Daniels said, rubbing his temples. This is beyond corruption. This is feudalism. Ryan Caldwell was in court that day for DUI manslaughter. He had hit and killed a cyclist. Let us listen in. I want to see how she handles this one. Back in courtroom 3B, the atmosphere was different. It was hushed, respectful. Ryan Caldwell, a younger, even more arrogant version of Tyler Bradshaw, stood at the podium with the same slick lawyer Harrington. Judge Voss's tone was somber, almost motherly. Mr. Caldwell, this is a terrible tragedy, she said. It is, Your Honor. Harrington interjected smoothly. And my client is devastated. But the facts which the prosecution has graciously stipulated to show this was a tragic accident. The cyclist, Mr. James, I believe, swerved unexpectedly. My client's blood alcohol level was at the bare legal limit. He is a grieving young man. Michael, sitting in the inmate box, watched the lie unfold. The real file his team had showed the blood alcohol level was higher and Ryan had been speeding in a low zone. Yes, I see, Judge Voss said. The prosecution has agreed to amend the charge from manslaughter to reckless driving and failure to yield. Given the extenuating circumstances and the victim's own contributory negligence, she banged her gavel. Charge dismissed upon payment of a substantial fine. Mr. Caldwell, you are free to go. Please be more careful in the future. The father, a portly man in an expensive suit sitting in the front row, nodded once at Judge Voss. A silent thank you. Voss, filled with the warmth of a job well done, then turned her cold eyes back to the inmate box. Now for the rest. Bailiff, bring me Mr. Reed. I have a plea offer for him. Emily Harper, who had watched the Caldwell dismissal with her mouth open in horror, rushed to the podium as Michael was brought forward. Miss Harper, Voss said, the prosecutor has generously offered to drop the contempt and vagrancy charges if your client pleads guilty to trespassing and resisting arrest. The sentence will be time in the county jail. A very generous offer. Time in the county jail for trespassing? Emily gasped. That is insane. He is not pleading to anything. We demand a trial by jury. A trial? Voss laughed. Fine, but his bail remains $50,000 and I will be presiding. And I will remind you that the maximum sentence for these combined charges, especially after he has wasted the court's time with a trial, is significant. The county jail time is a gift. She turned to Michael. Well, Mr. Reed, are you going to be smart for once in your life, or are you going to be stubborn? Take the deal. It is the best you are ever going to get. No, Michael said. His voice was no longer raspy. It was flat, cold, and clear. No, I will not be taking the deal. And no, I do not want a trial by jury. Then you are a fool, Voss shouted, slamming her hand on the bench. You will rot in that jail. I am finding you in contempt again. That is additional time. I will keep adding time until you are a skeleton. You're not going to be adding anything, Judge, Michael said, standing to his full height. The defeated, disheveled posture was gone. What did you say to me? Voss whispered, her eyes wide with fury. I said, Michael repeated, his voice now carrying the unmistakable ring of command, that your time on this bench is over. Bailiff Carson, you might want to put your hands on the podium slowly. Who the hell do you think you are? Carson snarled, moving toward Michael, his hand reaching for his baton. I think, Michael said, I am the man who has a recording of you offering a welcome package to an inmate who has a record of a kickback for the false conviction of Jamal Wright. And who knows about the offshore account in the Cayman Islands, the one you use for the commissary fund, account number 47B-992. Carson froze, his face turning the color of ash. Judge Voss's brain tried to process what was happening. What is this? What is this nonsense? This, Michael said, is the part where you stop talking. He turned his head and clicked his teeth. Agent Daniels, we are green. Execute. The words were barely out of his mouth when the main courtroom doors burst open. The doors did not just open. They exploded inward, slamming against the retaining walls. In poured a dozen figures, all clad in black tactical gear, with bold white letters emblazoned on their backs. FBI. The courtroom, which had been simmering in confused silence, erupted. Reporters who had been tipped off by Agent Lopez and were hiding in the gallery suddenly produced cameras. Emily Harper stumbled back, her hand over her mouth. Ryan Caldwell and his father, who had not left yet, were frozen in their seats. "Nobody move!" shouted Agent Daniels, his weapon held in a low, ready position. Two agents immediately peeled off and cuffed a stunned bailiff Carson, who offered no resistance. Two more moved to the prosecutor's table and secured Officer Reynolds, who had been observing his handiwork. Judge Patricia Voss was on her feet, her face a mask of apoplectic rage and utter confusion. What is the meaning of this? This is my courtroom. I am a sitting Article 3 judge. You have no authority here. I will have all of you disbarred and jailed. Michael Reed simply unclipped the front of his orange jail jumpsuit. Underneath, taped to his chest, was a small waterproof packet. He tore it open and produced a set of credentials and a badge. He walked past the bar, the symbolic barrier separating the law from the public, and slapped them on the ledge of the judge's bench. "Judge Patricia Voss," he said, his voice now a booming baritone that needed no microphone. "My name is not Jack Reed. It is Director Michael Reed of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The badge gleamed under the courtroom lights. If the room had been loud before, it was now cathedral silent. You could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. Voss stared at the badge. She looked at the disheveled man. No, the director standing before her. She looked at the FBI agents fanned out across her kingdom. The calculation was impossible. Her mind simply broke. "No," she whispered. "It is a lie. It is a trick. He is a vagrant." "I am the vagrant you tried to jail for trespassing," Michael corrected her, his eyes like chips of ice. "I am the project. You had your bailiff beat me in a holding cell. I am the refuse you thought you could sweep away." He turned to Agent Daniels. "Is it done?" "Yes, sir," Daniels said. "Agent Lopez has simultaneous warrants being served on the bank manager, 3 of Harrington's law partners, and she is personally freezing all of Judge Voss's known assets, including the charity and the Cayman account." "Good." Michael turned back to Voss, who had collapsed into her high-backed chair. She was no longer a tyrant. She was just a small, pale old woman. "Patricia Voss," Michael said, his voice formal, "you are under arrest for violation of Title 18, United States Code Section 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. You are under arrest for racketeering, United States Code Section 1961. You are under arrest for conspiracy, money laundering, and obstruction of justice." He nodded to Agent Daniels. "Cover." "You cannot." Voss whimpered as Daniels and another agent moved up to the bench. Judicial immunity. There is no immunity for this, Michael said. There is no immunity for running a criminal enterprise. There is no immunity for destroying lives. You were not a judge. You were a mob boss in a robe. The click of the handcuffs echoed through the chamber. It was the same sound her gavel had made, but this one was final. You set me up, she screamed as they pulled her to her feet, her hands bound behind her back. This is entrapment. Entrapment, Michael said, is when the government induces a person to commit a crime they otherwise would not. Tell me, Judge, did I induce you to hate me on sight? Did I induce you to set an unconstitutional bail? Did I induce you to have me beaten? Or did you do all of that all by yourself simply because you looked at my face and decided I was worthless? He did not wait for an answer. He pointed to the front row. Agent Daniels, arrest Ryan Caldwell and his father. The charge is bribery of a public official. We will sort out the jurisdiction later. Harrington, too. He is an accessory. As Voss was led, weeping and cursing from the bench, her bench, she was forced to walk past the man she had tried to destroy. You will pay for this, she shrieked at him. Michael just looked at her. No, Judge. You are the one who is going to pay. For the first time in your life, you are finally going to be held accountable. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. The courthouse was shut down by federal marshals. The press, who had only been expecting a small-time corruption story, had just witnessed the arrest of the century. Michael Reed, still in his dirty t-shirt and jail jumpsuit, stood in the center of the chaos, a general on a battlefield he had just conquered. Sir, Agent Daniels said, handing him a satellite phone. The Attorney General is on line 1. Michael took it. Mr. Attorney General. Yes, sir. It is done. The rot was deep. Yes, she is in custody. No, sir, I am fine. A little sore. He listened for a moment. I agree. We need to audit every single case she has ever presided over. And I need the Civil Rights Division down here now. He hung up and looked at the stunned faces remaining in the courtroom. The lawyers, the clerks, the reporters, they were all looking at him with a mixture of terror and awe. He saw Emily Harper, the public defender, pressed against the back wall, tears streaming down her face. He walked over to her. She flinched. Miss Harper, he said, his voice softening. Director Reed, she whispered. I had no idea. I tried, she was so powerful. You did what you could, Michael said. You were the only person in this room who spoke up for me. The only one who spoke up for Jamal Wright. It was not enough. It will be now, Michael said. He handed her a business card from his pocket packet. My team is going to need a statement. But more than that, we are going to need your help. You know the victims. You know the files. We are going to form a task force to review every nonviolent conviction Judge Voss has issued. I want you to help me lead it. Emily stared at the card. Me? But I am just... You are a good lawyer, Ms. Harper. You just needed to be in a courtroom that was not broken. Welcome to the new one. He left her and walked to the holding cell area by the courtroom. He had the marshals open the cell where the other inmates, including Jamal Wright, had been returned during the raid. Jamal looked up terrified as the FBI director, still in inmate attire, stood before him. Jamal Wright, Michael said. My name is Michael Reed. I know, Jamal said. The charges against you are being dismissed. All of them. The prior resisting charge is being expunged from your record. Officer Reynolds is not a cop. He is a criminal and he is going to prison. Jamal just stared, unable to comprehend. Your mother is outside, Michael said. Go home. Jamal Wright stood up, tears welling in his eyes. He walked past Michael and then stopped. Why? Why you? You could have. You are the director. Because, Michael said, if the system can do this to the director of the FBI had to find out what it was doing to everyone else. Now go get your life back. As Jamal ran out to find his mother, Agent Lopez approached, a tablet in her hand. Sir, it is even worse than we thought. We have got the bank manager. Voss was not just taking bribes. She was selling sentences, literally. She had a price list, a fee for a dismissal, a higher fee for a reduced sentence, and an even higher fee to make a felony disappear. She was charging a surcharge for minority defendants. What? Michael said, his blood running cold. It was an administrative fee, she called it. If the defendant was black or Hispanic, the bribe price was higher. She told the developers it was because it was harder to justify. Sir, she monetized her own racism. Michael closed his eyes. The sheer transactional evil of it was staggering. Where is she now? He asked. Federal holding downtown. She is screaming for her lawyer. She's about to learn that Harrington is in the cell next to her. Good, Michael said. I am going to get cleaned up. Then I want to be in that interrogation room. She and I are going to have a long talk about that price list. The legal proceedings against Patricia Voss and her criminal enterprise were swift and brutal. The United States Attorney's Office, with the full backing of the Department of Justice, threw the book at her. Voss, stripped of her assets, was forced to accept a court-appointed defender, a fact that seemed to humiliate her more than the charges themselves. She tried to play the victim. She claimed she was a political prisoner, a target of a deep state conspiracy. She accused Director Reed of planting evidence, of entrapment, of violating her rights. But the evidence was too vast. First, there was the audio. The courtroom heard in crystal clear digital sound Michael Reed's voice as Jack Reed being respectful. And they heard Judge Voss's voice dripping with venom and racial animus. People like you drain our resources. I will have you in contempt until you are a skeleton. Then there was the beating. The audio of Bailiff Carson and his guards assaulting Michael in his cell was played. The jury listened to the sickening thud of fists in Carson's voice. The judge does not like being disrespected. Carson and the guards had already pleaded guilty and were testifying against her in exchange for a lighter sentence. Then there was the money. Agent Lopez presented a financial flowchart that was so complex it looked like a circuit diagram. It showed the money from Caldwell, from other developers, from law firms flowing into her charity, then being laundered through offshore accounts, and finally ending up in her possession to buy a beach house, a luxury car, and an extensive wine collection. Finally, there was the testimony. Rosa Mendoza, the whistleblower, told her story of being fired and threatened. Emily Harper, no longer timid, spoke for days, detailing the atmosphere of terror Voss cultivated. And then dozens of victims, mothers, fathers, and siblings of people like Jamal Wright, people who had lost their children, their homes, their jobs, all because of Voss's corrupt, racist justice. The jury deliberated. Patricia Voss was found guilty on all counts. The sentencing hearing was packed. Michael Reed sat in the front row, this time in a perfectly tailored suit. He was not there as a victim, but as a witness, representing the system she had almost broken. The new judge, a no-nonsense federal judge named Robert Whitaker, looked down at Voss. Patricia Voss, Judge Whitaker began, you have been found guilty of crimes so heinous they strike at the very heart of our democracy. A judge is the final line of defense for the Constitution. You turned that defense into a toll booth. You did not just break the law. You were the law, and you used that power to feed your own greed and your own pathetic prejudices. Voss, in an orange jumpsuit, started to speak. You will be silent, Whitaker roared. You were silent when the families of the men you railroaded begged for mercy. You were silent when you took bribes to let the wealthy and the guilty walk free. Now it is your turn to be silent." He shuffled his papers. "I see here in your own files your preferred sentencing. You were fond of mandatory minimums. You were fond of maximum sentences. You believed in making an example of people. So I will follow your precedent. On the counts of racketeering and conspiracy, I sentence you to years in federal prison. On the counts of money laundering, I sentence you to additional years. On the counts of deprivation of civil rights, I sentence you to years for each count. These sentences will not be served concurrently. They will be served consecutively. It is a life sentence, and it is a merciful one. You will be transferred not to a comfortable country club facility, but to the federal supermax, where you will spend the rest of your natural life in a cell, just as you plan for so many others. You will have no power. You will have no influence. You will, for all intents and purposes, cease to exist. You are a blight on this nation, and you are dismissed." As she was led out, screaming, her eyes found Michael's. He did not smile. He did not smirk. He just held her gaze, a silent testament to the fact that justice, though it may grind slowly, had finally ground her to dust. The day after Judge Patricia Voss was led from her courtroom in handcuffs, the city did not celebrate. It held its breath. The arrest of a sitting judge by the FBI was not just a news story. It was an earthquake that had cracked the very foundations of the city's justice system. The public was left standing on the rubble, wondering what, if anything, was still standing. For director Michael Reed, the arrest was not the end. It was the beginning of the war. His first act was to establish a command center, not in an FBI field office, but in the very courthouse Voss had poisoned. He commandeered a high-floor conference suite, its windows looking down on the city she had lorded over. Within hours, it was transformed into the Justice Shield Task Force headquarters. The walls were papered with flowcharts, photographs, and timelines. The complex web of bribes and kickbacks that Agent Lopez had uncovered now looked like the battle map for an invading army. In the center of it all sat Emily Harper. She had barely slept, but she was electric, her eyes sharp and clear, the nervous tremor gone. She was no longer a timid public defender. She was a woman who had seen the monster behind the curtain and was now helping to tear the whole stage down. "Look at this," she said, her voice tapping a file on the long table. Michael and Agent Daniels moved closer. The file was thin, almost forgotten. Carlos Rivera, arrested for a broken taillight and resisting arrest. Officer Reynolds again. Daniels noted, his voice flat. Again, Emily confirmed. "But look at the transcript." Voss asked him his plea. He said he was not guilty, but he did not have money for a lawyer or for bail. Voss found him in contempt. Then she found him in contempt again for asking what that meant. She stacked contempt charges until the broken taillight became a sentence. But it gets worse. She pointed to a handwritten note on the prosecutor's memo. Voss held him. At the end, she brought him back, offered him time served if he pleaded guilty to the resisting charge. He took the deal just to get out. He is now a convicted felon for a broken taillight. He lost his construction job, his apartment. His wife and kids moved back to Arizona. His life obliterated. "How many?" Michael asked, his voice a low rumble. "We have flagged over 2,000 cases just like this," Agent Lopez said from her terminal. "Non-violent minority defendants, disproportionately high sentences, and almost all of them represented by the public defender's office because she knew they were too overworked to fight her." "She was not just a racist," Emily said, slamming the file shut. "She was a predator. She was targeting the weak because she knew they could not fight back. She had help. Michael said, turning to the wall. He pointed to a photo of a man in a tailored suit smiling at a police charity gala. She was the queen, but she had a court. Let us go talk to the jester. District Attorney Victor Langley had prided himself on his untouchability. He was a politician, a creature of the system. He donated to the right campaigns, attended the right parties, and prosecuted the right people. When the FBI requested his presence for an informal interview, he arrived with his lawyer, full of bluster and professional outrage. He was shown to an interrogation room, not a conference room. Michael Reed was waiting for him, still in the simple t-shirt and jeans he had been wearing under his prison jumpsuit. He had not put a suit back on yet. He wanted Langley to remember the man from the cell. "Director Reed," Langley began. "This is a travesty. Patricia Voss was a rogue element, a tragic, isolated case. My office had no—" Michael cut him off. He slid a single piece of paper across the table. It was an email printed out. "Is that your signature?" Langley's lawyer leaned over to read it. Langley's face went pale. "That is taken out of context," he stammered. "Read it aloud, Agent Daniels," Michael ordered. Daniels stood from the corner. "To all assistant district attorneys with the Caldwell Initiative. As we move to support the mayor's urban renewal plan, please be advised that Judge Voss is taking a firm hand on all vagrancy and nuisance-related cases to expedite these matters and clear the docket. Your priority is to secure plea agreements. Do not over-litigate. Give her what she needs to clean up the district. Let us get these wins." Michael leaned forward. "Give her what she needs. Wins. Was Jamal Wright a win, Victor? Was Carlos Rivera a win? I was encouraging efficiency. That is not a crime," Langley protested. "No," Michael agreed. "But this is." He nodded to Agent Lopez, who entered and placed a thick ledger on the table. "This is the slush fund you and Voss managed, the police benevolent fund that Officer Reynolds and Bailiff Carson paid into. And this," she tapped a page, "is where you took money out for a consulting fee. You were not just following her lead, Victor. You were her gatekeeper. You were the one who suppressed exculpatory evidence. You were the one who told his assistant district attorneys to stand down. She could not have done it without you." Langley's arrogance shattered. He was a weak man who had hidden behind a powerful woman, and now she was gone. "I will testify," he whispered, his eyes wide with panic. "I will tell you everything. The other lawyers, the developers, Harrington, I will give you all of them." "You will," Michael said. "You are going to stand up in open court, and you are going to confess to every single life you helped destroy. And then you are going to prison. You were the district attorney. You, of all people, should have known the price. The first ripple of the dam breaking was the release of Jamal Wright. His mother, Denise, had been sitting on a bench outside the Cook County Jail. She did not trust it. She did not trust the TV, the lawyers, or the system. She would believe it when she saw it. Emily Harper sat with her holding a styrofoam cup of coffee. "It will not be long now, Denise. The judge signed the order this morning." "The new judge," Denise said, spitting the word. "The old one, I hope she rots." The heavy steel gate buzzed, a sound that usually meant a new prisoner was arriving. It scraped open. Jamal Wright stood there, blinking in the bright sunlight. He was not in a jumpsuit. He was in the same clothes he had been arrested in, which a guard had disdainfully thrown at him. He looked thin, pale, and terrified. He saw his mother. "Mama," his voice cracked. Denise Wright did not run. She walked, her legs shaking, and then she collapsed against him, her sobs echoing in the prison's sally port. "My boy, they gave me back my boy." Jamal just cried, his face buried in her shoulder. I thought I was gone. 3 years. I thought it was over. Emily Harper stepped forward, her own eyes wet. Jamal, my name is Emily. I was your public defender in the courtroom. Jamal looked at her, his eyes full of suspicion. It is over, Jamal, she said, her voice firm. It is really over. The charges are gone. The prior charge is gone. It is like it never happened. You are free. She handed him a card. This is the number for the task force. We are setting up a victims' compensation fund. We cannot give you back the time you lost, but we are going to give you everything else. Jamal just stared at the card. He looked from his mother to Emily and back to the sunlit street. He took one step, then another. He was outside the gate. He was real. As he and his mother walked away, holding on to each other as if in a hurricane, Michael Reed watched from an unmarked car down the street. That is one, Agent Daniels said from the driver's seat. One, Michael repeated. One down. Thousands to go. The karma for the wealthy was a different, colder vintage. Ryan Caldwell and his father, the portly developer, had their assets frozen on the same day as Voss. Their army of high-priced lawyers, who had been partners at Harrington's now-defunct firm, were all facing their own indictments. They were forced to accept the same plea deals they had once paid to avoid. They stood before Judge Robert Whitaker, the federal judge who had sentenced Voss, looking like ghosts. Their expensive suits were gone, replaced by ill-fitting rentals. Their arrogance was replaced by a hollow-eyed dread. Mr. Caldwell Sr., Judge Whitaker said, his voice ringing with contempt, you were a builder. You were supposed to build this city up. Instead, you chose to build your luxury condos on the foundation of human misery. You paid Patricia Voss to clean up neighborhoods, a task she performed by illegally jailing the poor, the homeless, and the black. You did not just bribe a judge. You funded a campaign of terror. I am bankrupt, the father whispered. You have taken everything. You have taken nothing, Whitaker thundered. The government has seized the profits of your criminal enterprise. You are not a victim. You are a co-conspirator. And you, Ryan Caldwell, you took a man's life with your car, and you used your father's blood money to walk away without a scratch. That ends. I sentence you, Caldwell Sr., to years in federal prison for conspiracy and racketeering. All your assets are forfeit. I sentence you, Ryan Caldwell, to years for the original charge of DUI manslaughter, which is now reinstated, and for your part in the bribery. You believed your money made you a different class of citizen? You were wrong. You are nothing but a common criminal. Get them out of my sight. As they were led away, the father looked back at the gallery as if expecting someone to save him. No one did. The entire city, which had once borne his name on buildings and hospitals, had already forgotten him. The final and hardest piece of karma was reserved for Patricia Voss. She was not sent to a country club minimum security prison. She was classified, due to the nature of her crimes and her specialized knowledge of the legal system, as a high-risk inmate. She was put on a bus, shackled at the wrists and ankles, and driven to ADX Florence, the Supermax facility in Colorado, designed to hold the most dangerous criminals in the federal system. When she arrived, she was processed. Stand on the yellow line, a guard barked. I am a former judge. Patricia tried, her voice weak. I have rights. I demand to speak to the warden. The guard, a large, impassive woman named Officer Grant, looked up from her clipboard. Your inmate number is 82291. You have the right to shut up. Strip. Patricia froze. What? Strip now, or I will strip you. Welcome to the show, Judge. Humiliated, cold, and powerless, Patricia Voss was subjected to the same invasive, dehumanizing search she had sentenced thousands of others to without a second thought. Her robes were gone. Her bun was gone. Her name was gone. She was given a rough orange jumpsuit and led down a long, echoing concrete hall. The sound of men screaming and banging on their doors was deafening. "You are in H Unit," Grant said, stopping at a solid steel door. "Special management 23-hour-a-day lockdown. I cannot be in general population," Patricia panted, the panic finally setting in. "They will kill me. I put people in here. Should have thought of that before, sweetheart," Grant said. She unlocked the heavy door. "You have got a cellmate. We had to move her. She does not play well with others." The door slid open. The cell was a tiny concrete box with a steel sink and a bunk bed. Sitting on the lower bunk was a broad, muscular woman with tattoos covering her neck and face. She was reading a worn paperback. She looked up slowly, her eyes as dead and cold as a shark's. "This," Grant said with a cruel smirk, "is Mama Torres. She is in for a lot of things, but she is particularly famous for running the Justice for Judges program inside. Seems her brother got railroaded by a judge in L.A. a few years back. He died inside. She hates crooked judges. Do not you, Torres?" Mama Torres did not say anything. She just closed her book and stood up slowly. She was a full foot taller than Voss. No, please," Patricia whimpered, backing away. "Oh," Grant said. "And Judge, one more thing." She held up her radio. "I am heading for my break. This wing is soundproof, and the camera, it has been glitching all day." She shoved Patricia Voss inside. "Have a good life, inmate." The heavy door slammed shut. The clack of the pneumatic bolt sliding into place was the last sound of freedom Patricia Voss would ever hear. She was left in the dark, with the physical embodiment of the karmic debt she had accrued over a lifetime of cruelty. Courtroom 3B was reopened. The room had been exorcised. The dark wood was scrubbed and polished. The lighting was bright and warm. The air no longer smelled of desperation. A new defendant, a young man named Ryan, stood nervously at the podium. He was there for shoplifting. At the bench, a new figure sat. "Please be seated," she said. It was Judge Emily Harper, robed and confirmed. She looked at the young man, not with contempt, but with a weary patience. "Mr. Brooks, I have read your file. I see you are struggling. I see you have got a job interview next week, and the prosecutor tells me you stole a tie and a bar of soap. Is that right?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ryan whispered, bracing for the hammer to fall. "The district attorney's office," Emily said, looking at the new young prosecutor, "has recommended diversion. I agree. The charges will be dismissed provided you complete hours of community service, but I am adding a condition." She looked to the back of the courtroom. "The court administrator, Ms. Rosa Mendoza, has agreed to personally mentor you. She is going to help you with your resume, and she has already found a clothing bank that will give you a full suit. No one should have to steal to look for a job." Rosa, the former clerk who had started it all, stood up and nodded at Ryan, a kind smile on her face. "See me after, son. We will get you sorted." Ryan looked from Rosa to Judge Harper, his eyes wide with a feeling he could not name. It was hope. "Thank you, Your Honor," he said. "You are welcome, Mr. Brooks," Emily said. "See that you do well." She banged her gavel. It made a clean, crisp sound, the sound of justice, not of doom. From the last row of the gallery, hidden in the shadows, Michael Reed watched. He saw the system he had broken open, now healing, being run by the very people who had been its victims. He stood and walked out unseen. He met Agent Daniels on the courthouse steps. The sun was setting, painting the city in gold. "It is done," Daniel said. The Voss task force just processed its last case, Carlos Rivera. He got a full pardon and a substantial settlement from the victims' fund. Good, Michael said, looking at the city. They are calling themselves the Survivors Club now. Daniels added, a small smile on his face. Jamal Wright is in trade school. Rosa Mendoza is running for city council. The new district attorney just indicted Officer Reynolds' entire precinct. You started a revolution, sir. We started to clean up, Michael corrected. It is not over. There is always another Voss. There is always another system built on greed and prejudice. But not this one, Daniel said. Not here. Not now. No, Michael agreed. Not this one. He put on his sunglasses, though the sun was fading. Let us go home, Daniels. We have got work to do. The next one is already out there, and she is probably wondering why her kickbacks are late. He walked down the steps, not as a victim, not as a vagrant, but as a guardian. He had worn the face of the forgotten to remind the powerful that no one, not even a judge, is above the law, and that karma sometimes carries a badge. In the end, this story leaves us with one unforgettable truth that hits straight to the heart. No matter how powerful someone becomes, no one is ever truly above the law, and justice has a way of finding even the most hidden corners of corruption. Judge Patricia Voss thought she ruled her courtroom like a queen, twisting the scales of justice to punish the weak and reward the wealthy, all while feeding her own greed and prejudice. She believed her black robe gave her the right to crush lives without consequence. But when director Michael Reed chose to walk into that nightmare as a disheveled man with nothing but his dignity, he reminded us all of something deeply moving. Real courage isn't loud or flashy. It's the quiet decision to step into the darkness so that others don't have to suffer alone. He showed us that true justice isn't just about punishment. It's about protecting the forgotten, standing up for those who have no voice, and proving that even the smallest spark of integrity can burn down an entire empire of evil. This story isn't fiction. It's a mirror reflecting the battles happening in courtrooms and communities across America every single day. It teaches us that when good people stay silent, evil grows bold. But when one brave soul decides enough is enough, the whole system can begin to heal. If this tale moved you, if it stirred something deep inside and made you believe a little more in the power of truth and accountability, then drop a comment below and tell me, what would you do if you discovered someone in power was abusing the system? Which part touched you the most? And if you want more powerful stories of justice, redemption, an unbreakable human spirit, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications and join our growing family. Let's keep shining light where it's needed most, together. Thank you for watching, and never forget, karma doesn't always come fast, but it always comes wearing the right badge.